idiots! What is up, peoples of YouTube? I'm the Motorcycle Mick, and today we're talking about something I don't think people really realize or not, and that's the fact that the Harley Davidson Milwaukee-Eight motor has an A style and a B style. Now, they don't call it that, but you can obviously see it, and there's some differences that are making it so that one has issues and one that doesn't. Before we get into that, if you are new to this channel or been watching for a very, 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 very long time, I'd be much obliged if you could hit that subscribe button down below. I upload every Tuesday and Thursday around 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I am currently doing 2 giveaways. Once I hit my subscriber goals, at 500 I'm giving away a pair of these badass gloves. At 1,000 I'm giving away a Bell helmet. And that's not going to be a half helmet, that's a full face. I'm giving away a full face Bell helmet, and it's going to be a dope looking helmet because I like the ones with the graphics on them. But going back to what I was talking about, I was over at Michigan Backers Racing yesterday, and I started kind of talking because I've been doing research on the Milwaukee-Eight motors because I kind of want to learn about as much as I can with these motors and everything, their quirks, their little issues, so even if I can address it before it happens or see if it's going to cause an issue. But then I brought up the issue of sumping, and what sumping is where you create a vacuum within your oil pan and you're not able to get oil through the channels quickly enough to keep your motor properly lubed up. And that's been an issue that's plagued the Milwaukee-Eight, but I figured out why there's some separation between touring models and, let's say, Softails, because this doesn't apply to Sportsters, because Sportsters don't have the Milwaukee-Eight. Granted, they are getting a new motor, maybe, unless they're going to replace it completely with the Street Fighter. But anyways, I mentioned that the other day we were talking about the sumping issues, and Senior, he is like a Milwaukee-Eight expert. This guy knows a lot about Milwaukee-Eights. He's torn them down, put them back together, and gave them lots of power. I will say that right now. But once I brought up the issue of sumping, it really came back to the way we looked at the motor, because before we really didn't think about it. We knew the transmission was obviously different than the touring models. I never really taken the time to look at the crankcase on my motor. Once I did, I realized that the crankcase on the Softails and the crankcase on the touring models is completely different. I think that's the reason that the Softails have not really had a sumping issue or a primary transfer issue. The cases are both different from the 114s. Let's say mine versus a special, like a Street Glide or Road Glide special. My whole transmission, my whole crankcase, they're all different. But those differences in them has really negated a lot of the problems that the Milwaukee-Eight has. And I know a few Softails that have issue with primary transfer issues, so primary oil getting into like transmission fluid, but I have not really seen. And if you have had this issue where you have a problem with sumping in your motorcycle, let me know down below what issue you had and if it was been diagnosed, because I haven't really seen that issue at all existing in Softails. But this got me really thinking. It's got me looking at my motor more and more, because I look at the size of the frame, the size of stuff that goes on the motorcycle and everything with it, and I start to realize that the crankcase that's on this, everyone knows that the Softails, I think they said somewhere it came with dual counterbalancers. It's a rigid mounted motor with dual counterbalancers, and I think like the touring models only have one. So my motor's bolted directly to my frame, whereas like the touring models, they're not rigid mounted. They got a whole engine mount that goes on there to, I guess, absorb some of the vibration, something like that. But you have to be able to fit the 114 or 107 into the frame of a Softail versus a full-size touring model, because the frames on those are a little bit wider. They always have a little bit more room for stuff to go between the front frame rails. And so to be able to fit this motor into my bike, they had to change some things, and I think that's where it kind of solves some of the issues that the bikes have been having, specifically the sumping issue where it's losing oil pressure because it can't pump it. The clearance between the crank and bottom of the oil pan is too thin to really develop that pressure needed to be able to throw oil where it needs to go. And upon looking at it and getting down there and measuring some stuff, I discovered that my oil pan was thinner and deeper, along with the different crankcase on there. I don't know the differences. That's the problem, is you can't really find a picture, and to be able to look at the difference in the crankcases, you have to tear the motor completely down, and I don't want to do that. I don't have the time to do that because I still have time for riding, and maybe it might become a winter project to actually tear them down and look at the differences. But I have a thinner and fat, deeper case, so that allows for it to fit into the Softail frame. So you can look at this. This is a Softail model. Okay, this is my 114. You've seen this bike before. There's my transmission. There is the little viewing window. But right here you can see 1, 2, 3 channels coming down. Actually, I think there's one at the bottom too. And that's my oil flow system that's going through, running into this, my cam cover. And that's where my oil pump is. But as you can see, looking at it, you can visually see those. You can see the transmission. Now it's kind of like tucked underneath. But when you look underneath the bike, they had to add that little extra bit of oil pan right there to be able to put this into a Softail. Looking at this, you can see the transmission is easily exposed. You can see all the stuff for it. But you can see it doesn't have those channels. It looks the same, but look right there. The oil channel is, and the oil pan is smaller. It's right there. Touring models were a little bit bulkier, and I don't know, really. I'm not Harley. I'm not pretending like I went in and did this whole science experiment on this, because this is just visual observation. But what that tells me is that there is an A and B style motor, and what I can really compare this whole thing to is having like an A and B motor. And what I mean by that is when the twin cams came out, A motors normally went into touring model, all the touring models. I can go through every one of them, but it went to the touring models. The B motors normally went to like the Softails and Dynas, so you had a distinction between the two, and the power might have been close to the same, but the things inside of the motor were completely different. I mean, you had the same crankshaft, you had the same pistons, all that kind of stuff, but then you had a bunch of added tensioners to make it run quieter. So Harley hasn't officially called the separation between the motor that's in the Softails compared to the motor that's in the touring models. They have not officially called it A and B motor, and there's not really anything listed as A and B motor for the M8s, but there is clearly a difference between the motors, the crankcases. Alright, update. Just talked to Milwaukee-Eight Jesus, and he explained it to me. If you know what it is, that would be senior at Michigan Backers Racing. But the way he explained it to me is the crankcase I have for my bike is closely resembled to a B motor from the twin cams. So that means I have an extra oil gallery for oil to go through. That's why I don't have that flow issue. But the crankcase is extremely close to the twin cam, because it's going to have its own unique ways because it's a Milwaukee-Eight crankcase, but I don't have all the extra tensioners. I don't have all the extra crap in there because I don't need it. But that's what I'm going with. Is the reason my bike does not have that sumping issue is because I have extra oil galleries inside my motor that the Milwaukee-Eight touring models don't. So there is a solution to having that oil problem with your bike, and that is just getting a Softail versus a touring model. I mean, obviously they are the same motor. It's going to be a Milwaukee-Eight 114, but there's going to be differences in the crankcase which allow me for better flow of oil. And I mean, being a smaller frame, like you said, the little oil spot underneath that motor has got something there. That being said, what I showed you in there, the difference is just like you can tell that the crankcases are different. I didn't get a chance to show you because they have an A motor or a twin cam in there, and I don't have really access to a B motor, but the crankcases are extremely different from each other. That's why, I mean, there is, I guess, technically an A motor and a B motor for Milwaukee-Eights, even though they don't label it as such because they have the different crankcases. It's still a Milwaukee-Eight. They haven't really created that separation between the two. They have to run things different. I mean, granted, I don't blame Harley for using a design that works really, really well, because it's a good working design. By using that close to, we'll say it's close to a B motor crankcase without, externally it can look the same. Granted, there are different oil galleries, different ways things are ran in there. The base design really helped create the Softails to be a better, the Softail Milwaukee-Eight is designed better, honestly, in my opinion, because it doesn't have all these issues that the touring models are having. And granted, like I said, you always have these new issues that arise, little quirks that you had to figure out. Overall, you don't really have that worry because they understand the issue. I mean, the one I was looking at was a 17, this is an 18. But the crankcases had to be different because the frames are thinner. The touring model's frame is wider, so it's a little bit more bulbous, bigger. At least to say, the way that this is designed, the way it works, is a lot more efficient for oil flow than what is in the touring models. Now, whether or not you could put one of these into the touring models, I'm not sure. I feel like it'd be too small. You'd have to create a bunch of custom brackets, and so he was very clear about that. He's very knowledgeable with Harleys in general. Really, he was the first one to kind of tear apart one of these motors and build it back up, because that bike has got a lot of custom stuff inside of it So yes, to answer the question I've been trying to get at this whole time, there is an A and a B motor for the Milwaukee-Eight. I mean, now whether you want to call it that, but the motors are not exactly the same and there's different things about it. But since I am stuck at a red light and booned, I'm gonna end this video here, guys. Just remember that no matter what anyone says, there are differences in the motors and the way they are. If you did like this video, be sure to leave a big thumbs up. Let me know you like the content I'm making. And if you're new, please do join us, join the McMob and subscribe. I mean, it makes me really happy. I bought a 114 now, and I bought the Softail version of it. So I mean, the issues, there's already a good designed crankcase where it's got a little extra oil flow and all this extra little stuff that makes my motor better than a touring model. I hope you have a great day, evening, night, morning, afternoon tea, brunch, lunch, nightcap, midnight snack, griddle, bacon sandwich, asshole, afternoon tea, and remember to always ride for freedom.
This shit is old school. They say I'm not supposed to, but I make my own rules. Dawg, this shit is old school. Yo, bitch, man, that's old news. She been on my whole crew. Yeah, that chick is ran through. Ha. This shit sound like old tool. Pull up and I drop the roof, and that bitch a old school. These niggas acting brand new. I just keep it old.